Hello, third grade, and welcome to Unit 3, Week 3. We're going to go ahead and get started on your vocabulary words. Your first word is the word support. To support something means you're providing for it or you're helping it. So when your friends support you while you're trying to do a project, they're offering you help and encouragement. Your family supports you as you're growing up, right? They give you food and clothing and shelter, a place to live. They buy you nice things. Your next word is the word warmth. Warmth is the heat that you feel coming off of something. So if you stand near a fireplace, you feel the warmth from the fire. If you pick up some clothes that just came out of the dryer, you're feeling the warmth from the clothing since it was in the hot dryer. Your next word is the word temperature. Temperature is basically how hot or cold something is. So if it's a cold temperature, that means if it's a low temperature, that means it's cold. If it's a high temperature, that means it's hot. Next, we have the word globe. And a globe is a model of the Earth. It's a scale model of the Earth. So it's basically the Earth in mini form. Next, we have the word amount. Amount means how much of something there is. So the amount of books we have in our classroom library would be how many books we have in our library. The amount of apples that you bought at the grocery store is how many apples did you buy. Next, we have the word surface. So the top layer of anything is the surface. Like we have the surface of the Earth. That's the part that we see, the ground that we walk on. That's the outside layer or outside area, the top part. Our next word is the word astronomy. Astronomy is the study of the stars and the planets. And our last word is solar system. So the solar system is the sun and planets and their moons and other objects that are in space. So Earth is a planet in our solar system. Next, we're going to go over your your spelling words for this week. And we're working with more R-controlled vowels. So we have the R and the sound that we're going to be working with. So, the and the sound. So careful, stared, shared, pair, stairs, where, bear, where, there, dear, rear, gear, here, career, peer, shore, carve, storm, square, and clearly. Those are going to be our spelling words for this week. All right, let's jump into our ELA notes, and we're going to be talking about past and future tense verbs. Now, remember, when we're talking about a verb tense, we're talking about when something is happening. So tense tells us when, gives us a sense of time. Is it something that was in the past, in the present, or in the future? Now remember, past tense means it's something that's already done. It already happened. And the verb usually ends with an ed at the end of it to show us that it's something that's already happened. So think about something you did yesterday or last week. Those are in the past. The same past tense verbs are going to be used with singular and plural subjects. So if our subject is one person, place, or thing, or plural, more than one person, place, or thing, our past tense verb is going to be the same. We're not changing it. It's not the same as present tense verbs. Those ones we have to change the form of our verb depending on if it was singular or plural. So remember, before I would have to say she is, right? She is singular, or they are, because they is plural. We would have to change it. With past tense verbs, you don't have to change it. It stays the same. So if a word ends with a silent E, so these are some important rules that we need to remember when we're changing something to past tense. We have to drop the silent E before we add the ed onto our verb. So smile becomes smiled. So in order for me to add the ed to make it past tense, I had to get rid of that silent E that was already on the word smile. Trudge becomes trudged. Now, if your word ends with a consonant plus the letter Y, we need to change that Y to an I before we add the ED. So carry becomes carried. Yesterday, I carried my little sister. Hurry becomes hurried. We hurried to get to class on time. So since it ends with a consonant letter, remember a consonant is anything that's not a vowel. Consonant letter plus letter Y, switch that Y to an I and then add the ED. Now, if the word ends with a vowel plus a consonant, now we're going to flip it, right? Vowel plus a consonant. You're going to double that last consonant before you add the ED. So grin, G-R-I-N, becomes grinned, G-R-I-N-N-E-D. Stop becomes stopped, S-T-O-P becomes S-T-O-P-P-E-D. Now, the reason we do that, and this is just something to keep in the back of your head because you're going to see it come up later, is because the reason we double that last consonant is it shows us that that original word ended with a consonant and it didn't end with a silent E, because usually if it ends with a silent E, we drop the E and add the ED. But if it ends with a consonant, we double the consonant to let us know that it's a word that ended with a consonant and then we're adding the ED. So think of, there's some words like the word hop and hope. When you make them past tense, hopped becomes H-O-P-P-E-D. Hoped becomes H-O-P-E-D. So doubling that last consonant helps us to figure out how we're supposed to say the word. How are we pronouncing it? We know that when it's not doubled, that vowel should have been long. Hope becomes hoped. But hop has a short O, it says ah, becomes hopped. That's just something to keep in the back of your mind while you're reading. Now, when we're working with past tense verbs, again, we're adding that ED. So I gave you guys a couple of examples here. Flash becomes flashed, walk becomes walked, look becomes looked, clean becomes cleaned. And there are some example sentences. The shooting star flashed across the sky last night. They walked to school this morning. We looked at the trees on the way to school. After our art lesson yesterday, I cleaned my area. So these are all past tense verbs because they have the ED at the end of them. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about briefly is abbreviations. So abbreviations is a very long word that's used to describe how we make a word very short. So an abbreviation is a short way of writing a long word, and they always begin with a capital letter and they end with a period. Abbreviations start with a capital letter and end with a period. Now, some of the things that we abbreviate are street names and titles that people have. So if I write the word street, I abbreviate it as a capital S, T, and then a period. Avenue becomes a capital A, lowercase v-e, and then a period. Drive becomes DR, capital D, lowercase r, and a period. Road becomes capital R, lowercase d, and then a period. Now, when we're talking about titles that people have, so doctor is also capital D, lowercase r, and period. Mrs., capital M, R-S, period. Miss, capital M, lowercase s, and then a period. Or Mr., capital M, lowercase r, and then a period. So this helps us when we're writing something to make it shorter and easier for us to write. So remember, abbreviations always start with a capital letter, always end with a period. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about are prefixes and suffixes. So we've talked about prefixes already before. Prefixes and suffixes, remember we said, are both parts that we add onto a word, and the words prefix and suffix both come from the root word affix. So when you affix something, you are sticking it or you are attaching it to something else. So a prefix is attached to the beginning of a word, and a suffix is attached to the end of the word. Now, prefixes and suffixes have a job. So if you want to know what they do, look at what they do to the meaning of the word. A prefix and a suffix will change the meaning of the word that we attach them to. Now, the suffixes you're going to be working on this week are the suffix full, adding a Y, adding an LY, like Lee, and then able, adding an ABLE. So when we add full to the end of a word, FUL, it means full of something. So something is beautiful, it's full of beauty. If you're being very careful, you're doing something in a way that's full of care. If something is very peaceful, it's full of peace. Now, when we add a Y onto the end of something, we're describing it as having a lot of that thing, like when we're describing the weather as rainy. Rainy means the weather is, there's a lot of rain. If it's gloomy, there's a lot of gloom. It's kind of dark and cloudy. If we're talking about the beach being very sandy, there was a lot of sand. Now, Ly means it's talking about a certain way that something is done. So if you do something carefully, you're doing it with a lot of care. If you're talking to your neighbor quietly, you're talking in a very quiet way. And your last one is the word, is the suffix able, which means you're able to do something, or it's capable of being done. Like something that is preventable can be prevented or stopped. When an animal is adaptable, it is able to adapt and make changes to fit into its new environment. Something that is predictable can be predicted or guessed. And something that is acceptable can be accepted. All right, let's move on into our stories for this week. Now, our first story is called Earth, and this is in our literature anthology book. This is an expository text, so remember that means it's giving us information and it's teaching us something.
Genre: expository text. Essential question: what do we know about Earth and its neighbors in space? Read about how Earth is different from the other planets and the Moon. Earth by Jeffrey Zulke. Our home planet. Have you ever seen this planet before? This is Earth. It is home to you and everyone you know. Billions of people live on this planet. Billions more plants and animals live here too. That makes Earth a special planet. As far as we know, no other planet has living beings on it. How does Earth support life when other planets do not? Our planet has everything creatures need to live. It has water. It has air we can breathe. People enjoy the bright sunshine and warm temperatures on a beach. Earth's water and air make it an ideal place for living things. From space, you can see Earth's blue oceans and brown land. How is our planet different from other planets? Earth has warmth, too. Gases covering the planet hold in heat from the sun. That keeps our planet warm, but not too warm. Some planets are much too cold to support life. Others are much too hot. Earth is just the right temperature to support life. We can study Earth in our own backyard, but scientists have also learned about Earth by studying space. They have learned how other planets are different from ours. Learning more about space helps us understand why our planet is one of a kind. Studying space has allowed us to learn a lot about Earth. Stop and check. Summarize. What did you learn about Earth in this section? Summarize the first section in your own words. Earth and its neighbors. Earth shares its neighborhood in space with many other planets. Earth is part of the solar system. The solar system includes the Sun and 8 planets. It also includes rocks called asteroids. Dwarf planets are part of the solar system too. Dwarf planets are smaller than the 8 main planets. The Sun lies at the center of the solar system. The planets closest to the Sun are Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. These planets are made mostly of solid rock. Scientists call them the rocky planets. Pluto, Kuiper Belt, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter. This diagram shows planets and objects in our solar system. The asteroid belt and Kuiper belt are groups of rocky and icy objects. Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, asteroid belt. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are called gas giants. They are mostly made of gas. They are the largest planets in the solar system. They are also farthest from the Sun. Earth is the largest of the rocky planets. It is the fifth largest planet in the solar system. Earth is nearly 8,000 miles, 12,800 kilometers wide. But our planet is much smaller than the gas giants. More than 1,000 Earths could fit inside Jupiter, the biggest planet. Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter, left to right, are gas planets. They are much larger than the rocky planets. Earth is the third planet from the Sun. The Sun is about 93 million miles, 150 million kilometers away from Earth. To travel that far on Earth, you would have to circle the globe 3,733 times. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. This picture shows the 8 planets in our solar system. The Sun appears on the left, and the dwarf planet Pluto is on the right. This picture shows the size of each planet compared to others. The Sun may be very far from Earth, but its rays warm the planet. Deserts like the Sahara get very hot. Each planet follows its own path around the Sun. The path is called an orbit. The orbits are a little bit elliptical. Elliptical. That means they are oval-shaped paths. Earth takes a little more than 365 days to orbit the Sun. One trip around the Sun equals 1 year. Planets also rotate. Rotate. As they travel, they spin around like a top. Each planet rotates around its axis. Axis. An axis is an imaginary line that runs through the center of the planet from top to bottom. Earth's axis is tilted, so Earth leans to one side as it spins. It rotates all the way around in 24 hours. That's exactly 1 day. Earth's orbit around the Sun. Earth. Average of 93 million miles, 150 million kilometers. Sun. Mercury's orbit. Venus's orbit. Earth's orbit. Mars's orbit. This diagram shows the paths of the rocky planets around the Sun. Earth's rotation, direction of spin, axis. Earth is tilted on its axis as it rotates. It takes 24 hours to complete one rotation. Earth's closest neighbor. Everyone knows about Earth's closest neighbor. We see it in the sky almost every night. It is the Moon. The Moon is much smaller than Earth. It is about 2,160 miles, 3,475 kilometers wide. About 50 moons would fit inside Earth. Our Moon orbits Earth, just as Earth orbits the Sun. The Moon takes about 27 days to travel around Earth. Like our planet, the Moon also rotates, but it rotates much more slowly than Earth. The Moon takes a little more than 27 days to turn all the way around. Since it travels around Earth in the same amount of time, the same side of the Moon always faces us. The moon looks small when shown side by side with Earth. It is actually much farther from Earth than shown here. From night to night, the moon seems to change shape. Sometimes we can see the full moon. Other times it looks as if it has been cut in half. The moon's shape seems to change just a little each night. Over about 1 month, it grows into a full moon and then gets smaller and disappears again. Phases of the moon over 28 days. The moon seems to grow bigger until half of its round shape shows, top row left to right. This is called the moon's first quarter. It grows larger until we see the full moon. The full moon shines for a night or two. Then it looks smaller bit by bit until we see the last quarter, third row from top. Finally, the crescent disappears into a new moon. We see only the parts of the moon that are lit by the sun. As the moon travels around Earth, sunlight hits the moon from different directions. When it hits the side of the moon facing Earth, we see a full moon. If it mostly lights the side facing away from Earth, we see only a sliver. The moon may not seem far away, but it is very far. Our moon is 238,855 miles, 384,400 kilometers from Earth. Imagine you could drive from Earth to the moon in a car going 50 miles, 80 kilometers per hour. It would take nearly 200 days of non-stop driving to get there. The moon is closer to Earth than any planets are, but it is still very far away. Stop and check. Reread. Why does the moon seem to change shape? Reread to find the answer. Once you reached the moon, what would you see? The moon's surface is mostly gray rocks and dirt. You would see some mountains and many deep valleys. You would also see many craters. Craters. Craters are bowl-shaped pits in the surface. Some craters are just a few miles wide. The largest ones are more than 1,000 miles wide, 1,610 kilometers. Craters are formed when rocks or ice from space slam into the moon's surface. These objects are called meteorites. Meteorites and comets. Comets. The moon's surface has craters of many different sizes. These craters are on the side of the moon that faces away from Earth. This image shows the gray surface of the moon. The dark patches are areas filled with lava rock. This is the side of the moon we see from Earth. What else would you notice? There is no life on the moon. The moon has almost no atmosphere, so there is no air to breathe. Without an atmosphere, nothing protects the moon from the sun's heat. Nothing holds in any of the sun's warmth either, so the moon gets very hot and very cold. Sunny parts of the moon get as hot as 253 degrees Fahrenheit, 123 degrees Celsius. Other places get as cold as minus 387 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 233 degrees Celsius. Look up at the night sky. Can you see the moon, our nearest neighbor in space? The sun and the planets are out there too, even if you can't see them now. Look down at the ground. That's Earth, our home planet. We are all part of the solar system. The moon is seen through a thin layer of Earth's atmosphere. The moon has no atmosphere of its own. Genre, legend, compare texts. Read this Native American legend about why there are stars in the sky. Coyote and the Jar of Stars, a Cochiti legend. Long ago, there were no books about astronomy. No one explained how planets in the solar system moved around the sun. Instead, people looked up at the stars and told stories about them. This is one of those stories. A crowd of animals and people gathered in the forest. Coyote shoved his nose between Deer and Owl. "What's going on?" he asked. "Shh," scolded Owl. "Earth Mother is speaking." "The sky is empty and dark. Can someone paint pictures in the sky with these stars?" said Earth Mother. She held a large clay jar. "I'll do it," yelped Coyote, wagging his tail excitedly. Earth Mother frowned. She remembered other times Coyote had helped. He always made a mess of things. She quickly handed the jar of stars to a tall man standing nearby. "Sorry," she said, "this man wants the job." "People have all the fun," mumbled Coyote, slinking away. The man dotted the sky with some stars. "This is called Great Bear," he said. After carefully arranging more stars, he said, "This is Mountain Lion." Then he placed the brightest and named it the Morning Star. He put the jar down and gazed upwards. Everyone admired the man's beautiful creations. Earth Mother smiled. No one noticed Coyote tiptoeing through the crowd toward the jar. "I can do better than that," he boasted. Just a few more steps and he'd reach the jar. Coyote was so excited that he didn't notice a pine cone under his feet. He slipped on the pine cone, flipped head over tail, and crashed into the jar of stars. "Yee!" Coyote howled. Everyone gasped as the stars floated up and scattered across the sky. They remain there to this day, without names or patterns, all because of Coyote. And that's why Coyote looks up and howls at the night sky. Make connections. Why did the Cochiti people make up this story about stars? Compare this story to non-fiction articles you have read about space.
All right, that's the end of our literature anthology. Let's get into our reading and writing workshop stories.
Genre: expository. Earth and its neighbors. Galileo studied the sky with a telescope he built. Essential question: what do we know about Earth and its neighbors? Read about how we have learned about space. If the sun could talk, it might say, "Look at me, look at my sunspots, I am so hot." Without the sun, Earth would be a cold, dark planet. How do we know this? Thanks to the astronomer Galileo, we know a lot about the sun and the rest of our solar system. Telescopes, looking up. Galileo did not invent the telescope. However, 400 years ago, he did build one that was strong enough to study the sky. When Galileo looked into space, he saw the rocky surface of the moon. When he looked at the sun, he discovered spots on its fiery surface. The moon is Earth's closest neighbor. Astronomy, or the study of space, began with the simple telescope. But astronomers wanted to look at the sky more closely. They made bigger telescopes that could see further than the one Galileo used. Astronomers still had many questions. Satellites, a step closer. In 1958, scientists launched Explorer-1, the first American satellite, into space. It was an exciting day for America. Soon, many satellites circled the globe and took photographs of Earth, the Moon, stars, and other planets. They collected a large amount of information. Satellites even tracked the temperature on the planet Saturn. Scientists have learned many things about the solar system from satellites. That's why they kept sending more into space. Soon, there were hundreds of satellites in space making amazing discoveries, but astronomers wanted to know even more. That's why they found a way to put a man on the moon. Explorer 1 takes off. One Giant Leap. In 1961, Alan Shepard became America's first astronaut. He blasted off into space in a rocket and then turned around and came back to Earth. His short trip was a big success. Shepard's flight proved that people could go into space. After Shepard, more astronauts went into space. Some orbited the Earth. Some walked on the dusty, bumpy surface of the moon. They took pictures and collected moon rocks. Astronauts wanted to answer some important questions. Did the sun's warmth heat the moon? Could the moon support life someday? Astronaut Edwin Buzz Aldrin walked toward the lunar module. Aldrin left his footprints on the moon. Aldrin brought home this moon rock. Scientists studied the photographs and moon rocks that the astronauts brought back. They made exciting discoveries using telescopes and satellites, but it wasn't enough. Scientists wanted to get closer to the other planets. Soon they found a way. Hubble and beyond. Scientists created another telescope, but this time it was gigantic. They sent it up into space. The Hubble Space Telescope was launched in 1990. It's still up there and orbits the Earth above the clouds. It takes clear, close-up photographs of stars and planets. It sends fascinating information back to Earth. The Hubble helps scientists study Earth and its neighbors. It also helps astronomers see planets outside our solar system. It takes the Hubble telescope 96 minutes to orbit the Earth. More discoveries every day. Scientists are still asking questions about Earth and its neighbors in space. With the help of satellites, telescopes, and astronauts, they will continue to explore and find answers. What can we see? With our eyes, with a simple telescope, with the Hubble telescope. With our eyes, the moon. With a simple telescope, craters on the moon. With the Hubble telescope, planets outside our solar system. With our eyes, the sun. With a simple telescope, sunspots. With the Hubble telescope, stars bigger than the sun and far, far away. With our eyes, Mars. With a simple telescope, clouds around Jupiter. With the Hubble telescope, Jupiter's surface. This is a Hubble telescope photo of an exploding star. Make connections. How have we learned about Earth and its neighbors in space? What do you see when you look at the sky? Summarize. When you summarize, you tell the most important ideas and details in a text. Use these ideas and details to help you summarize Earth and its neighbors. Find text evidence. How did telescopes help us learn about space? Identify important ideas and details and summarize them in your own words. If the sun could talk, it might say, "Look at me, look at my sunspots, I am so hot." Without the sun, Earth would be a cold, dark planet. How do we know this? Thanks to the astronomer Galileo, we know a lot about the sun and the rest of our solar system. Telescopes, looking up. Galileo did not invent the telescope. However, 400 years ago, he did build one that was strong enough to study the sky. When Galileo looked into space, he saw the rocky surface of the moon. When he looked at the sun, he discovered spots on its fiery surface. I read that Galileo built a telescope. He discovered sunspots and saw the moon's surface. Details help me summarize. Telescopes helped scientists learn more about space. Main idea and key details. The main idea is the most important point an author makes about a topic. Key details tell about the main idea. Find text evidence. What details does the author give about satellites? I can reread and look for important details about satellites. Then I can use them to figure out the main idea. Graphic organizer. Detail. Satellites take photographs of Earth, the Moon, stars, and planets. The key details tell about the main idea. Expository text. Earth and its neighbors is an expository text. Expository text gives facts and information about a topic, has text features such as headings, keywords, and charts. Find text evidence. I can tell that Earth and its neighbors is expository text. It gives facts and information about telescopes, satellites, and space. It has headings, keywords, and a chart. Text features. Keywords. Keywords are important words in the text. Chart. A chart is a list of facts arranged in rows and columns across a page. Suffixes. A suffix is a word part added to the end of a word. It changes the word's meaning. The suffix y means full of. The suffix ly means in a certain way. Find text evidence. On page 215 in Earth and its neighbors, I see the word rocky. Rocky has the suffix y. I know that the suffix y means full of. The word rocky must mean full of rocks. When Galileo looked into space, he saw the rocky surface of the moon.
All right, that takes us to the end of our notes. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful week. Take care. Bye-bye.